Welcome to Teshar's Thunder. As far as opening hand goes, yeah, this is really good. Astronaut's Altar, Lightning Greaves, Wrath of God. Definitely keep on this one. And then the only thing that makes this better is if we were on the play. Playing against Azusa, Lost but Seeking, so hopefully it's not more than likely to be Azusa Eldrazi, but hopefully we can get some good artifacts going before Azusa gets her Eldrazi on the battlefield. Let's go and get down some planes, and then anything else that we're going to go for. I guess we could go for Mox Opal. But yeah, we're just going to hold on to it just in case our opponent has some sort of artifact removal. And then we're going to go and pass the turn to our opponent. We're playing Teshar, Ancestor's Apostle. Flying, whenever you cast an historic spell, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And excuse me, if you're keeping score at home, a historic spell is an artifact, legendary, or a saga. We're playing against Azusa, Lost but Seeking. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. An opponent's going to get down a Secure Tribe Elder. Now let's see what we draw to. Draw to Kami of False Hope. Okay, let's go and get down plains. Do we want to tap out for Mox Opal and Lightning Greaves? Yeah, I think I like that. That's going to turn us online next turn. Let's get down Mox Opal. Let's go and tap out for Lightning Greaves. And that way we'll have a pretty good board state to protect Teshar off this one, so we get down Lightning Greaves. And one of the main things that you do want for this deck is something like Astronaut's Altar, and I'll kind of explain that here in a second. Anything else, yeah, we'll kick the turn back over to our opponent. We cover both commanders as free time. We can do whatever we want. I just got done recording a Teshar game where I played against Mizzix, and I may, depending on how this game goes, I may tack it on at the end or something like that. But yeah, just had some really nice... with Teshar, there's a lot of different loops in here. We have Peerless Mirror in here, which is going to deal 2 damage to target opponent. We also have a lot of graveyard recursion, so there's a lot of different loops that you can just kind of just stumble into, and that'll kind of just basically win the game for you. And so let's go and get down plains. Do we want to go for... We get down to Astronaut's Altar, that'll be an additional... That'll put us online for Metalcraft with Mox Opal. Yeah, let's go and do that. Let's go and tap out for Astronaut's Altar. Yeah, I like that. We'll get down Kami off this Mox Opal, and then we'll go and shift Lightning Greaves over onto Kami. Okay, and then we're not going to swing in just yet. We're just going to go and pass the turn. So we'll be ready to get down to Teshar next turn. We'll also have an artifact to cast out of the hand. That way, if we do need to put something into the graveyard, if we need to sacrifice Kami for some reason, we can bring it back onto the battlefield. But yeah, so there's a lot of different loops in here, but there's sometimes where you can just kind of have this really nice value board state. Like I had, Stoneforge Mystic. Like I kept sacrificing Stoneforge Mystic and putting artifacts onto the battlefield, and I think I had like 2 or 3 Stoneforge Mystic loops in one turn, or not loops, but to enter the battlefield trigger. So it always makes for an interesting match whenever you can get that going. But I'm just going to get down Karametra's Acolyte, which is going to be Devotion to Green. Let's go and get plains down. We're looking at about 5 total mana at this point right now. Our opponent's tapped out. Let's go and get down to Teshar. I definitely want to do that. Let's tap out on Mox Opal, and then 1, 2, 3. We'll get down to Teshar. We're going to shift Lightning Greaves over onto Teshar. There we go. That's going to be 2-2 in the air. We could sacrifice Kami to bring back, to get down Wildfield Scarecrow if we wanted to, or simply just to get down Mentor of the Meek. Won't have that extra mana to pay for it though, but actually, I think I kind of like that. Let's do this. Let's go and swing it with Teshar. It's going to knock our opponent down to 28. And this deck is just really interesting to play because it's, like I mentioned, there's some loops you can take, but there's sometimes where you can kind of develop these different little board states. Let's go and tap out for plains. Let's go and sacrifice Kami of the False Hope. Yeah, if I'm looking at that correctly. No, it's not going to be an artifact. Never mind, excuse me. I was thinking that we could sacrifice Kami and then cast Mentor of the Meek to bring it back, but that would not work that way. So let's just go and pass the turn to our opponent, and then next turn we can get down Wildfield Scarecrow, or at least work on getting down Mentor of the Meek and taking advantage of that. Typically, you want to have a pretty good chunk of card draw in here, and stuff like Mentor of the Meek works really well in this deck since we have so many, stuff like Kami where it's just looking at 1 total power and toughness, and you can really take advantage of that Mentor of the Meek, enter the battlefield trigger. Opponent's going to go for Destroy Target Artifact or Enchantment. Okay. Do we want to do anything in response to that? No, I guess they're going to get it on that one. A little bit of a bummer, but it's not the end of the world. That does turn us off Metalcraft, so we will miss out on Mox Opal, unfortunately. But with Teshar in the air and Fraley sitting at 1, hopefully we'll be able to swing it with Teshar and keep her off the battlefield. Opponent's going to go for Sad Robot. Okay, an opponent does pass the turn. Let's see what we draw to plains. Let's go and get plains down. And I guess at this point, we're going to get down Mentor of the Meek. Yeah, I like that. We could get down Wildfield Scarecrow. That'll put it at 1, 2, 3, and give us just enough for Mentor of the Meek. But I'd like to cash in a card draw if possible. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go and get down Mentor of the Meek. This is going to be 1, 2, 3. And let's go and push past on this one with Teshar. We could put the Lightning Greaves over on Dementor of the Meek, but since Teshar does have flying, we're just going to swing in at Freylease and just take care of her, keep her off the battlefield at this point right now. Let's go and push in with Teshar. We're going to attack Freylease on this one, knock her down to 0. At least put her down to -1 loyalty. And then anything else, we're going to kick the turn back over there. Now, as far as next turn goes, we got down Mentor of the Meek. We are looking at getting down Wildfield Scarecrow. If we want to, we can actually sacrifice Cammy just to bring it back onto the battlefield for whatever reason, if we wanted to do that, just to kind of bring it out there. But at least the main thing is that actually kind of give us 2 Mentor of the Meek triggers, which I actually don't mind going for that particular line of play, because that way it allows us to kind of draw into a couple more cards. Now, we did miss out on Astronaut's Altar, unfortunately. We do have Clark Clay and Ironworks in here. That's going to allow us to kind of start sacrificing a lot of our artifacts to generate that colorless mana, and those are going to be most of our combo pieces that allow us to really kind of start to churn through our library. Opponent's going to get down, they've got some pretty good devotion going with Karametra at this point right now, but thankfully, with Cammy the False Hope on the battlefield, sacrifice to prevent all combat damage to be dealt this turn, that's kind of going to buy us a little bit of an insurance policy, you know, in case we're looking at something like a big Crater Hoof coming down or some sort of Eldrazi. We haven't really seen that crazy of a build from our opponent, really any Eldrazi creatures, at least on the top part of their library, so maybe it might be a little bit more of a traditional mono green build. If it's not Eldrazi, I definitely welcome it. It'd be really nice off that one. And our opponent's going to get a ton of mana going off Extraplanar Lens. We'll see what force they exile off of that one. But yeah, I do like going for the Cammy and the Wildfield Scarecrow line of play next turn. Hopefully to kind of start to draw in a little bit more options with Mentor of the Meek. All right, opponent's going to pass the turn, see if they're going to swing in. They have 2 creatures with Summoning Sickness, so they're actually not going to do that. So let's see what we draw into. Draw into Pilgrim's Eye. Let's go and sacrifice Cammy of the False Hope. That way we can get that double the Mentor of the Meek trigger. So we're going to prevent all combat damage this turn. Actually, should have swung in with Teshar first. Sorry about that. It's going to get down Pilgrim's Eye. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss the Mentor of the Meek trigger. All right, so we're going to have Cammy enter the battlefield. We'll get that Mentor of the Meek trigger. I'll pay for 1 off of that one. Yes, we're going to use that ability. Draw into Uwazama's Jite, okay. And we'll have Pilgrim's Eye enter the battlefield. On this one, we're still going to go ahead and pay an additional 1. Off this one, and we'll search up that land off of Pilgrim's Eye trigger. Yes, we're going to use that ability to use Mox Opal. And we'll grab a Plains off of this. I was going to get down to Plains, and I guess technically we're not going to have enough mana to pay for another Mentor of the Meek trigger. So let's do this. Let's just go ahead and get down Stoneforge Mystic. Now with Pilgrim's Eye, what we can do is we can actually get down Stoneforge Mystic and then equip the Skull Clamp onto Pilgrim's Eye and really get into the spots where hopefully we can kind of start drawing into a ton of decks. I mean, a ton of cards. We're going to use Stoneforge's ability. It's going to grab Skull Clamp and then anything else. We're going to go and pass the turn. We have no mana, unfortunately, pay for Mentor of the Meek. And then since I sacrificed Cammy of the False Hope, we're not going to be able to swing in for 2. So hopefully this is not going to be our undoing in this particular matchup. But like I was mentioning earlier, you know, when you're playing Teshar, you definitely... You know, it's always nice to get some sort of loop going to kind of help you close the game out. But you can also get into these just board states that are just oozing with value. You know, let's say that we get down Skull Clamp, we sacrifice Cammy next turn, or we sacrifice Pilgrim's Eye that goes into the graveyard. We cast Skull Clamp, that's going to bring back Pilgrim's Eye. It's going to allow us to get kind of get that card draw going, and at the same time get that enter the battlefield trigger, and it's really kind of keep that nice loop going out of your graveyard. Opponent's going to get down God of Hunt, okay. And they got down Vernal Bloom, so whenever a force is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional green to their mana pool, and they also do have Extraplanar Lens too, which is quite the mana producing over there. Now, our opponent will be pumping up Azusa at this point right now. They only have 1 card in the hand. They do have Greater Good, so with us having Cammy on the battlefield, more than likely what we're going to see is some sort of Greater Good shenanigans to where they sacrifice Azusa to kind of draw into a bunch of cards. But let's see what they're going to do though. Okay, so they do pump up Azusa up to a 9/10. Let's see if they're going to swing in. We're going to go for the Cammy activation. So prevent all combat damage will be dealt this turn. And they will go for a Greater Good activation off Azusa, drawing 10 cards actually. So they've got 10 cards in their hand. And on top of their library is going to be a Crater Hoof. So we definitely want to get Cammy back onto the battlefield before we see a Crater Hoof coming down next turn. Opponent's going to tap out for Wood Elves, okay. But yeah, this is kind of like I know how Marin players feel whenever they get Spore Frog going, to where they just keep sacrificing Spore Frog to just buy them an additional turn, and it's just it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have Cammy on the battlefield, knowing that Crater Hoof's breathing down your neck. But you've got this little spirit creature card that's going to be able to help buy you a few more turns before your opponent has it. And that, thankfully, our opponent's playing mono green, so it's going to be really hard for them to deal with Cammy. About the only way they can do that is some sort of like scavenging ooze effect, to where they can exile it out of the graveyard, which they definitely could be running in here, or even something as like Relic of Progenitus too. Okay, and our opponent will pass the turn over us with 4 cards left in their hand. With them drawing 10 cards off Greater Good, and them only basically going for like Sylvan Scrying, Nature's Lore, and Cultivate, definitely take that. There are worse things that could happen off of that one. Let's go ahead and get down Skull Clamp. Let's go and tap out a Mox Opal. That way we can bring back Cammy onto the battlefield, and we can start to equip Skull Clamp onto Pilgrim's Eye. Let's go and pay that 1 to draw an additional card. Draw into Plains. Let's go and get Plains down. And then nothing has reach at this point right now. Just want to make sure. Yeah, nothing has reach. Let's go and swing it with Teshar and Pilgrim's Eye, and then we'll go for that Skull Clamp activation on Pilgrim's Eye. That's going to be 4 total commander damage. Knock them all the way down to 36. And let's go and go for Skull Clamp on Pilgrim's Eye. Draw to Mishra's Bauble and Swiftfoot Boots. Let's go and get down Swiftfoot Boots. Yeah, I think we're okay with that particular matchup. We'll get down Swiftfoot Boots. That way we can at least protect Cammy at this point right now. So we'll bring back Pilgrim's Eye. That'll make sure we make the land drop for next turn. And we can still go and pay for Mentor of the Meek. Yes, we're going to use that 1. Ooh, there we go. Drawn to Ironworks. Okay. And yes, we're going to use that ability. Let's go and grab Plains off of that one. And then we'll get down Swiftfoot Boots, and we'll go and equip Swiftfoot Boots onto Cammy. That way, if they have something like Beast Within or something like that, or they're trying to draw into Beast Within, we can at least protect Cammy at this point right now. Is there anything else that we want to go for? I kind of want to hold on to Mishra's Bauble at this point right now. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just go and pass the turn to our opponent. Now, we did draw into KCI, so we do have Ironworks. What that's going to do is it's going to allow us to sacrifice an artifact to add 2 mana to our mana pool. At this point right now, with us having Skull Clamp on the battlefield, something like Pilgrim's Eye and Cammy the False Hope, what we really need to do is draw into one of our loop cards. So we have Peerless Mirror. Whenever we sacrifice Peerless Mirror, whatever Peerless Mirror dies, Rampaging Balos, put a 4/4 beast token, okay. But whenever we get Peerless Mirror on the battlefield and we sacrifice it or it dies, it's going to deal 2 damage to target opponent. And so basically we get that going, we get some sort of recursion like Mishra's Bauble, or some way to kind of just basically generate some sort of loop that's going to allow us to kind of basically deal 2 damage to our opponent as we establish that loop. So it's always nice to have some sort of mana-producing artifact like Astronaut's Altar that hit the graveyard. Opponent's going to go for Rampaging Balos, getting those beast tokens onto the battlefield. And now this is going to be an interesting board state because basically with Greater Good out there and all these beast tokens, they're going to be able to, they've got a ton of mana with Vernal Bloom and Mana Reflection. They can really get some good stuff going with Greater Good, drawing a ton of cards and really kind of pulling through their deck. So we'll see if our opponent will have some sort of answer for Cammy. Because at this point right now, as long as we just keep some good artifacts in the hand, opponent's going to go for Mentor of the Meek on with Gurkha. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. It's going to take care of that. It's going to send Mentor the Meek to the graveyard. But that's one of the fun things about playing this deck is we go for Mishra's Bauble and be able to get Mentor the Meek back onto the battlefield. So it's really not the end of the world on that one. And it looks like our opponent's going to go for Greater Good, pumping up of one of the beast tokens again. So we'll just go and let them kind of speed this up real quick. Okay, opponent's going to finally tap out for Ulamog, so they did draw into some sort of Eldrazi answer. They're going to go for Lightning Greaves and go for Skull Clamp on this one, so I'm really glad that we we ended up getting Swiftfoot Boots down onto Cammy. Okay, the only downside with Ulamog is that they're going to be able to exile our library, which is not good. Is there anything that we can do in response to this? Lightning Greaves and that? Yeah, that's fine, okay. Alright, so we got Ulamog breathing down our neck at this point right now. And then, unfortunately, with Mentor of the Week hitting the graveyard and our Skull Clamp getting exiled with Ulamog, it's going to make it a little hard for us to really get some really good repeated card draw going. And then our opponent's going to go for Prey Upon with Teshar on Courser of Krufix. So it's going to send Teshar back to the command zone. Okay, all right, so we've got our work cut out for us next turn. We'll see what else they can go for. They can still go for a few more Greater Good activations if they want to. We'll kind of see what they end up shaping up for the rest of the turn. They're going to get the other Ulamog on the battlefield, destroy target permanent. Okay. It's going to take care of Swiftfoot Boots in the bin. Let's go and then we're going to go to the combat step. Let's go ahead and sacrifice Kami of the False Hope. Prevent all combat damage will be dealt this turn. There's really not much they can do. We'll just save them some clicking from swinging in. So we have Kami trigger going in. Now we do have at least 2 artifacts on the battlefield. Once we cast Mishra's Bauble, that'll put Metalcraft online. That's going to be us tapping out, unfortunately though, for 6 mana with Teshar, which really kind of limits what we can get done in this particular turn. But let's see what we draw into. Either way, we're looking at Ulamog swinging across next turn. We can still bring back Kami. And then, but unfortunately, the Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves have both been taken care of. So, ooh, drawn to Mirror. That'd been nice to have that with the full board that we had. Let's go and get planes down. Yeah, we need to get Teshar going. So let's go and get Teshar. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go and cast Mishra's Bauble. And I guess since we do have Mirror, yeah, let's do that. Let's go and get Kami down. And unfortunately, I think we're 1 mana away. If we were able to get down... now, what we can do is if we can just simply pass the turn and go for 1 more Fog with Kami, I think we might be able to get it with Ironworks next turn. I'm not entirely sure if I want to get down Peerless Mirror just yet, but what we could end up doing is going for Mind Stone, and that would give us an additional... we could bring back Mentor of the Meek if we really needed to get that going for next turn. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go and get down let's get down Mind Stone. That allows us to cash in another card draw. And we get down Mentor of the Meek. Bring that back onto the battlefield. And we'll get that down, and then let's just go ahead and pass the turn to our opponent. Unfortunately, we're going to be unprotected with Teshar, but yeah, I think we might be able to get this one out, depending on how they want to swing in. We still have Kami on the battlefield, so we can fog out their combat step. That does put us in a spot where we're looking at Ulamog. But basically, next turn, we can get down Ironworks and also tap out for Peerless Mirror. And then we might be able to kind of string some stuff together to where we might be able to kind of go for that. All right, opponent's going to get down Ulamog, the Annihilator 4. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and sacrifice Kami. That way we prevent all combat damage. And that's going to be Annihilator 4. Let's go and sacrifice Stoneforge Mystic. Let's go and sacrifice Mentor of the Meek, Pilgrim's Eye, and then we'll go and sacrifice Mishra's Bauble. Alright, so we're going to get 20 cards exiled out of our library. That's going to fog out the combat steps, so we're going to stay at 30. And then we'll at least be able to get down Ironworks and then hopefully be able to kind of combo off next turn. But let's see what else we're going to roll out for the turn. Something like another fight spell would definitely be really detrimental to us with Teshar just sitting out there by himself on the battlefield. Okay, and it looks like our opponent will pass the turn, so hopefully that'll buy us an additional turn. At least kind of get some stuff set up this turn. Drawn to planes. Let's go and get planes down. Let's go and get down Ironworks, KCI. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's see, who do we want to bring back? So let's go and bring back Stoneforge Mystic. That way we can get that trigger entering the battlefield. Yes, we're going to use that ability. Let's go and grab an additional, we'll grab Sword of Feast and Famine. Have KCI hit the battlefield. Let's go and tap out for Peerless Mirror. That's going to be 1, 2. Let's go and bring back Pilgrim's Eye. We'll search our library for a Plains card. Yes, we're going to use that ability. Now, unfortunately, we do have the loop on the battlefield, but we just can't really get that loop, some sort of loop going. We could tap out for Wrath of God, but they're going to have Indestructible. And then unless I'm missing something, yeah, there's not really going to be any way for us to kind of start churning through. If we had some sort of way to bring back stuff out of the graveyard, if we have one more kind of piece like that, we could get that going. But it looks like, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get that done. I'm just trying to see. We could bring back a few more stuff, but yeah, with no sort of graveyard recursion or bouncing something back to the hand. Well, we can still go and bring back Kami. Let's go and do that. We'll get down Umazama's Jitte. Get Kami back onto the battlefield. That'll buy us an additional turn to go for that. And we'll go and hold on to some of these artifacts, at least kind of pass it over to our opponent's turn. Okay, opponent's going to go for Naturalize in response to that. Let's go ahead and go for, I guess we'll just go and sacrifice the Ironworks to its own self. Yes, we're going to use that ability. It's going to be 2. And then what we can do is at least get down Sword of Feast and Famine, but that's still not going to protect us from Ulamog, and we're looking at another Annihilator for 4. Let's go and get down Sword of Feast and Famine. It's not the best thing that we could be doing at this point right now, but at least we just need some bodies on the battlefield for that Annihilator. We'll see what we can't draw into off of that one. All right, Sword of Feast and Famine. We're going to equip that onto Teshar. It's going to be 1, 2. That'll allow us to untap off of that. Okay, and our opponent's going to go for a few more activations off this beast token, so we're going to let them do that real quick. And our opponent will go for greater good for drawing 15 cards off of this one. And let's go and take a look at some of the stuff that did get exiled with Ulamog off this one. It's not the end of the world with some of this stuff. You know, stuff like Fate's Reward, always nice to kind of draw into. But we'll give it one more go off this one. We'll basically have one more swing off of Ulamog coming across with that exile trigger. But it's not looking too good for us at this point right now. Now, does anything have reach out there? No. Just want to make sure, because what we can do is we can at least still go and swing in with Teshar. That way we can get a little bit of extra of untap our lands. We don't really need him at this point, though. So we'll just go and probably end up leaving Teshar up if we wanted to go for that to protect him from green. But it looks like opponent's going to go for a few more God of the Hunt trigger activations. Okay, it looks like our opponent finally might go ahead and pass the turn, or at least let us move to our combat step. Oh, there we go. Opponent does have Beast Within, destroy target permanent. Yeah, they've got 19 cards in the hand. We'll still go and push this across, but we're going to go and hold it up on this one. And we'll at least go for the Kami. Oh, and our opponent ends up going for Plummet, so they're going to be able to take care of Teshar, which is going to be absolutely brutal. Now, we will be able to go for Kami of the False Hope to kind of fog out this combat step this turn, but with Teshar hitting the command zone again, it's going to be a little hard for us to kind of get anything going. One of the not downsides, but one of the big things that really hurt us this game, our opponent got off to a really quick start getting rid of Ashnod's Altar, and at the same time getting rid of KCI. When you're playing against mono green, it's always nice to kind of play against a deck that doesn't have a ton of creature removal, but when you're playing against mono green, they tend to have a lot of answers for artifacts, and so when you're playing a full artifact-based deck, tends to be a little scary sometimes. Our opponent was definitely packing the artifact hate, so we'll go and let them do their thing. Then we'll once we get to the combat step, we'll go and tap out for Kami. Okay, opponent's going to be swinging in. It actually looks like I had it on F6 while they were doing a bunch of stuff. But basically what happened is they had unnatural aggression. Target creature you control fights another target creature, and then if it die, exile it instead. They were going for a few more activations, so unfortunately that hit Kami off this one. So we're going to go and scoop it up on this one. They got rid of Kami. It wasn't really looking that good anyway. Our opponent's basically drawing out their entire deck with greater good. So it's a little bit hard for us to kind of get that going. And there we go. Finally drawn to some sort of recursion to kind of get those loops going, but unfortunately without KCI on the battlefield, or even, actually let me pull that up real quick. So long story short, opponent had greater good on the battlefield, sacrifice creature, draw cards equal to its power. They had just basically numerous ways to generate a ton of mana. We have extra planar lens, we have Bloom out there, mana reflection. When you add in stuff like God of the Hunt, you can start pumping up your creatures. You're basically looking at drawing 10, 15 cards a turn. And unfortunately, they're going to be able to find an answer for whatever we were trying to do. We finally did hit Peerless Mirror, which is going to allow us to deal 2 damage to any target. Once we kind of get that going with some sort of loop, bringing it out of the graveyard, that might have been able to allow us to kind of close the game out. But since our opponent was able to dig really deep into their library, they were able to find answers for KCI and for Ashnod's Altar very early on in the game. Typically, you can see who's going to win the game by looking up here. Our opponent had 17 cards left in the library. We had 52, so we're only able to dig about halfway through our deck, whereas our opponent was able to get all the way down to basically like the last 10% of their deck almost, or last 20%. And then really just kind of basically find answers for everything. But this is pretty much everything you want to do in a Teshar deck. Get down a lot of artifacts, get stuff like Skull Clamp on the Pilgrim's Eye, and just kind of start going from there. But unfortunately, when you're playing against mono green, they have a ton of answers for artifacts, and our opponent does get it on this one. So good game to our opponent. It was definitely kind of refreshing to see a deck that's not using Eldrazi as the main win condition, you know, trying to turn it out as quickly as possible. It's always nice to just kind of see it kind of be a little bit more of a closer, or once you kind of get to those late turns, you know, it's anybody's game at that point right there. And it was definitely a lot of fun playing against our opponent. If they see this video, hey, good game. And if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.